understand, as always and everything, only literally, without any awareness of the inner meaning put into them. And such a nonsensical literal understanding proceeds in them, of course, always owing to the fact that they have entirely ceased to produce in their common presences dog duty, which should be actualized by being efforts which in their turn alone crystallize in the three-brained beings data for the capacity of genuine being pondering. That is why, my boy, in the given case also, they could not ponder at least only about the fact that when this sacred individual, Jesus Christ, was actualized among them, and when this same existing holy writ of theirs was compiled, so many definite words were not used by beings similar to these compilers as are used at the present time. They do not consider that at that period, being mentation among the beings of this planet was still nearer to that normal mentation, which in general is proper to be present among three-brained beings. And that at that time, the transmission of ideas and thoughts was, in consequence, still what is called podobnisirnian, or, as it is still otherwise said, allegorical. In other words, in order to explain to themselves, or to any others, some act or other, the three-brained beings of the planet Earth then referred to the understanding of similar acts which had already formally occurred among them. But meanwhile, this also now proceeds in them according to the principle called chenonizirones, and this first proceeded there because, thanks as always to the same abnormally established conditions of ordinary existence, their being mentation began to proceed without any participation of the functioning of their what are called localizations of feeling, or, according to their terminology, feeling center, chiefly in consequence of which this mentation of theirs finally became automatized. And hence, during all this time, in order to have the possibility of even approximately making clear to themselves or explaining anything to anyone, they were themselves automatically compelled and continue to be compelled to invent very many almost non-significant names for things, and also words for ideas, great and small. And therefore the process of their mentation began little by little to proceed, as I've already said, according to the principle chenonizirones. And it was just with this mentation of theirs that your contemporary favorites tried to decipher and to understand a text written still in the simulnizernian manner for the mentation of beings contemporary with the divine Jesus Christ. And so, my boy, it is necessary to explain to you about a certain fact, in the highest degree absurd, and in the objective sense, blasphemous, for a greater clarity of the real nothingness of this holy writ, still existing today among your favorites, which, apropos, became particularly widely spread after their last process of reciprocal destruction, and in which, as you already surmise, there is everything you please, excepting reality and truth. I will inform you, namely concerning what is said in this contemporary holy writ, which has, as it were, reached them in an unchanged form, about the chief, most reasonable, and most devoted of all the beings directly initiated by this sacred individual, or, as they would say, about one of his apostles. This devoted and favorite apostle, initiated by Jesus Christ himself, was called Judas. According to the present version of this holy writ, everyone who wishes to draw on the true knowledge will acquire such a conviction, which will also be fixed in his essence, that this same Judas was the basest of beings conceivable, and that he was a conscienceless, double-faced, treacherous traitor. But in fact, this Judas was not only the most faithful and devoted of all the near followers of Jesus Christ, but also, only thanks to his reason and presence of mind, all the acts of this sacred individual could form that result, which, if it did not serve as the basis for the total destruction of the consequences of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer in these unfortunate three-brained beings, yet it was nevertheless, during 20 centuries, the source of nourishment and inspiration for the majority of them in their desolate existence, and made it at least a little endurable. In order that you may better represent and make clear to yourself the genuine individuality of this Judas and the significance of his manifestation for the future, I must first still inform you that when this sacred individual, Jesus Christ, intentionally actualized from above in a planetary body of a terrestrial being, completely formed himself for a corresponding existence, he decided to actualize the mission imposed on him from above through the way of enlightening the reason of these three-brained terrestrial beings by means of 12 different types of beings chosen from among them, and who were specially enlightened and prepared by him personally. And so, in the very heat of his divine activities, surrounding circumstances independent of him were so arranged that, not having carried out his intention, i.e., not having had time to explain certain cosmic truths and to give the required instructions for the future, he was compelled to allow the premature cessation of his planetary existence to be accomplished. He then decided, together with these 12 terrestrial beings intentionally initiated by him, to have recourse to the sacred sacrament Alms no Shino, the process of the actualization of which sacred sacrament was already well known to all of them, as they had already acquired in their presences all the data for its fulfillment, so that he should have the possibility, while he still remained in such a cosmic individual state, to finish the preparation begun by him for the fulfillment of the plan designed for actualization of the mission imposed on him from above. And so, my boy, when having decided on this, and being ready to begin the preliminary preparation required for this sacred sacrament, it then became clear that it was utterly impossible to do this, as it was too late. They were all already surrounded by beings called guards, and their arrest and everything that would follow from it was expected at any moment. And it was just here that this Judas, now a saint, and formerly the inseparable and devoted helper of Jesus Christ, and who is hated and cursed owing to the naive non-reasonableness of the peculiar three-brained beings of your planet, manifested himself and rendered his great objective service for which terrestrial three-brained beings of all subsequent generations should be grateful. This wise, onerous, and disinterestedly devoted manifestation taken upon himself consisted in this: that while in a state of desperation, on ascertaining that it was impossible to fulfill the required preliminary procedure for the actualization of the sacred Alms no Shino, this Judas, now a saint, leaped from his place and hurriedly said, "I shall go and do everything in such a way that you should have the possibility of fulfilling this sacred preparation without hindrance," and meanwhile set to work at once. Having said this, he approached Jesus Christ, and, having confidentially spoken with him a little, and received his blessing, hurriedly left. The others, indeed without hindrance, finished everything necessary for the possibility of accomplishing this sacred process al Shino. After what I've just said, you should now, without any doubt, understand how the three-brained beings of the two types indicated by me of the planet Earth, which has taken your fancy, have distorted, for various egoistic aims, all the truths to such an extent that about this Judas, now a saint, thanks to whom alone such a blessed hearth of tranquility from their desolate existence had arisen and existed for them for 20 centuries, there has been crystallized in the presences of the beings of all subsequent generations such an unprecedented, unjust representation. I personally even think that if this Judas was presented in their holy writ as a type of this kind, then it may have been for this reason that it was necessary for someone or other, also belonging to the mentioned types, to belittle in this way, for a certain purpose, the significance of Jesus Christ himself. And, namely, he appeared to be so naive, so unable to feel and see beforehand, in a word, so unperfected, that in spite of knowing and existing together with this Judas so long, he failed to sense and be aware that this immediate disciple of his was such a perfidious traitor, and that he would sell him for 30 worthless pieces of silver. At this point in Beelzebub's tales, he and all the passengers of the intersolar system ship Karnak suddenly sensed in their organ of taste a special sour, bitterish taste. This signified that their ship was approaching that place of their destination, in the given case, the holy planet Purgatory. They sensed the sour, bitterish taste because a special magnetic current was released from the steering compartment of the ship to inform all the passengers of the approach to the place of destination. Beelzebub therefore interrupted his tale and, glancing affectionately at his grandson, said, "Now we shall have willy-nilly to stop our talk about this sacred individual, Jesus Christ. But nevertheless, my boy, when we arrive home and exist on our dear Caratas, remind me sometime when I am free to finish telling you about the whole of this history in detail. All the history of the actualization of this sacred individual in a planetary body among your favorites, both concerning his existence among the beings of various groupings of this planet of yours, and also concerning his violent end, is very, very interesting just for you who wish to explain to your reason all the details of the strange psyche of these peculiar three-brained beings. And it will be very instructive and interesting to know that part of the history of this Saint Jesus Christ, which relates to the period of his existence there from the ages of 12 to 28, according to their time calculation.